Hey out there. So, have you ever seen somebody posting and gushing about their partner when you know good and well they are having tons of issues? It's because we're always keeping up appearances. And there's this uncomfortable truth that, well, it's not a truth, I'm sorry, it's a myth. There's an uncomfortable myth about relationships that good couples can never struggle. So we hide behind these shiny smiles and these perfect pictures. But we need to unpack this because this is actually what I see as a generational pattern that keeps many of us stuck in our relationships. So a lot of us were raised under the family rule of we don't talk about our problems outside of the house. And this facade of perfectionism becomes the armor that we present to the world. We keep the outside all polished up so nobody suspects or knows that we are hurting inside. But this isn't the 50s anymore. We get divorced if we need to. However, divorce is even less taboo than admitting that you're having a rough patch. And this is the secrecy that keeps you stuck. If secrecy is baked into our problems, then we can actually never ask for help. And the idea of therapy or coaching, while I think it's perfectly normal, I know there's still some stigma around that. But where do you fall? Are you able to admit out loud that not only is a relationship not perfect, but sometimes you just aren't happy? And it's perfectly normal for two people in a long-term relationship to have different ideas about things, even important things. And the longer you've been together, the more you grow and you change. And this can even be a point of miss in the relationship. But here's the thing that most people don't understand. A disagreement is actually a fork in the road. And it's going to cause either another thin layer of resentment because no one felt heard or validated, or it's going to be a space where everyone got to say how they were affected, maybe even come to a compromise. And if all goes well, there'll be some makeup sex where you can just recalibrate everything. But here's the secret sauce to getting to the makeup sex. You have to learn to validate someone's reality even when you think they're wrong. And this is a next level skill, but it is an absolute game changer. And over the years, lots of friends have opened up to me about their problems, just knowing that I'm a non-judgmental ear. So it's been easy for people to tell me their relationship problems. We'll just call it part of my calling. So I often got the privilege of hearing both sides of the story. And it was always fascinating to me that the argument is valid, completely valid from both perspectives, but neither person has the same perspective. And I've noticed this in my life as well. So one person starts talking, and when it strays too far from the other person's reality of what happened, they start jumping in to correct the perspective, like it's wrong. And so now you end up in this tug of war over who was right instead of how each person was affected. And in the heat of this discussion, it can start to spiral with everybody trying to explain how they saw the situation. That's not right. You're not seeing this right because you're not seeing it from my point of view. And then nobody ends up being validated. And then that's when you get this extra layer of resentment. But if you are calm, collected, and it's just easy to let somebody spew their emotional issues, but we don't do that. We get emotionally pulled into righting the wrongs that we see unfolding. And then there's this other layer that's happening, because when we're dealing with people who have had childhood neglect where they never felt heard or validated, maybe you weren't allowed to disagree or say your part, all of this gets highly triggering. And it can cause this emotional spiral where nothing gets agreed upon and no compromise is had. And this is how we end up just hurting each other just a little bit at a time and not healing through it. However, if we take a little pivot and we learn how to validate, listen to the other perspective, and also caress that neglected inner child, we now have a bonding session instead of an argument. And that's when you decide that you two are not enemies. You're fighting the same battle. I mean, everybody just wants to feel loved and seen and intimately bonded with their person in spite of the past, the childhood past, relationship past. None of that should matter. All that matters is what's in front of you. And in order to make your person feel loved and validated, sometimes you have to be the one to take the step back. Because all relationships have some discord. But it's how you deal with it that's the key to make it or break it. So no matter how calm that you want to be, if your feelings were passed over and never taken into account, and your reality is never validated, your inner child will always want to cry out. And what that means is that we need to get under the layers. And I say this a lot, but really getting under the layers and understanding, where do these triggers come from? Because the way we experience the world is very much tied to the stability or lack of that we experienced in childhood. You can't have a balanced partnership if your inner child is constantly on edge. And these are really common cycles. And they aren't bad per se, but they can be difficult to get out of without deliberate action. And if these sound familiar, I'm offering a solution. I'm actually putting on a 3-day challenge at the end of the month, and we'll be digging into healing relationship pain. It's never about the dishes or the forks. It's always something so much deeper. So getting deep with yourself is the only way to really ease relationship chaos. And this challenge isn't about manipulating your partner into making you happy. I know that sounds like the easy way. But it's about finding the areas where you lost yourself and then understanding why. Why did you put yourself in that situation? Why do you have these patterns? But you have to get really deep. And the funny thing is, which is really interesting to me here, is that there's a parallel here. So women who are single and women who are in a relationship who need a tune-up, they're at a very similar stage. So they are both soul-searching as to the role they personally play in their relationships, as well as looking at their idea of partnership and what they need from a partner. The hard part is very few people actually know what they need from a partner. So we're going to be taking a long look, and we're going to start digging into these triggers and how come we end up in these stupid relationship patterns that don't get us anywhere. So we're going to find out where these needs actually came from. And this challenge is really for women who are serious about learning how to get what they want from a relationship, because this is deep work. I don't do surface work. We like it deep. And so it's the last weekend of the month, and signups are actually going to start next week. You can DM me if you want to. But this is a chance to work with me for 3 days. It's 1 hour each day. It's completely free. But we're going to start taking the baby steps into getting that sizzling, hot, sexy love that you really crave from a relationship. Because there's no need to feel ashamed if you don't have a perfect relationship. That's actually a very rare thing. But you do have an opportunity to build it for yourself. And that's what you do. You don't find the perfect relationship, you build the perfect relationship. But first, you have to understand yourself at an extremely deep level. So that's where I'm taking y'all. Because I am Connie Lynn Parker. I'm your spiritual life coach and your life alchemist. And this is an opportunity to speak your truth, build more magic in life, and spread the love. You know, as always, I love you guys. Mwah.